Today is the Lunar New Year, the biggest holiday in Korea, along with Chuseok in autumn. Now, Korea follows the solar calendar in a day-to-day life, but traditionally the lunar calendar was the norm, and traditional holidays still follow the lunar calendar, including the New Year's and Chuseok. Traditionally, it's a day of family gathering. It would typically open with a memorial ritual for the family ancestors. By the way, I already have dedicated episode about Chesa, the memorial ritual. Check it out if you missed it. The link's in the description and at the corner of the screen. The ritual is followed by family breakfast with a tteokguk as the main, and then they would wish a happy new year to the senior members of the family with a jeol, or form of a big bow or curtsy. The latter is often the highlight for the younger members of the family because it's a customary for the senior members to give them some pocket money in return for their good wish. And in the afternoon, the family would usually pay a visit to the tombs of their ancestors. All around a family-centric and family-affirming day. But that's the simplified and ideal picture of the family New Year's. But the reality would be more complicated and nuanced. The occasion may stir up some obvious or some hidden baggages of the family. It may even lead to an unexpected paranormal sighting, because it's commonly said that the spirits of the ancestors do visit for the memorial ritual in their honor. Today, as the New Year's Day special, I collected stories of weird things happened on New Year's Day. I also included one forgotten tradition from the past regarding a particular type of ghost, somewhat more amusing than scary. So, here are 10 stories from Korea about weird things happened on New Year's Day. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by host, Anthony. Among the monsters and ghosts in Korean folklore is what was called a loom ghost, as in luminous ghost. Loom ghosts are the spirits of particularly greedy people, the kind who would let others starve so that they could have one more in their own mouth. As the punishment, they are left forever hungry and deprived in the hell. But not all of them become loom ghosts, only those who dare to escape and get caught. They are turned luminous so that they are clearly visible even in the dark of the hell, and for that merit given the role to guide the condemned souls down to the hell. So, living humans rarely have a reason to encounter a loom ghost, except for on New Year's Day, when they get one day off from their duty. Despite of all the punishment, they are still greedy. They'll sneak into people's homes to warm themselves up and then try on clothes and shoes in the household and just take them when they fit. The people who lost their clothes and shoes to a loom ghost are said to become unlucky the whole year because the loom ghost has taken all of his or her good luck as they stole the clothes or shoes. To fend off these pesky ghosts, people used various tactics. Block the gaps in doors and windows, hide clothes away, wear colorful rainbow shirt because loom ghosts don't like bright colors. The most common practice was to keep shoes inside. Koreans don't wear shoes in the house, and in the traditional houses they used to leave shoes outside. But for the New Year's Day, they would be kept in the room. One more amusing tactic is to hang a fine basket or sifter outside. Loom ghosts are sneaky and curious, but dumb, and can count only up to 2. As they sneak into the house and find a basket or sifter, they would get curious and start counting its holes. But alas, they can only count to 2, and they carry on doing it over and over till the dawn breaks when they have to go back to hell. Loom ghosts aside, there were of course various customs for New Year's Day. all of them basically to fend off the evil and bring in the good luck for the new year. The sound of pounding to make rice cake has the side effect of scaring evils away. Likewise, some people used to burn the fallen hair and nail clippings that they saved over the previous year the night before the New Year's. People didn't throw away hair or nail clippings casually, but that's a whole different thing to explain some of the time. They believed the burning smell of hair and nail had power to fend off the evils. These customs are mostly lost in the modern time, and few would even know they existed. They may seem a bit ridiculous to the modern understanding, but the idea behind them, the wish for a happy and healthy new year, is just as earnest and true as in any other time. But just in case, keep your shoes well for this one night. It's what my cousin experienced just this New Year's Day. As usual, he and other family members gathered at Grandma's to perform the memorial ritual. When the ritual table was all set with offerings of food, my cousin saw spirits of one old woman, two old men, and a middle-aged man. They sat in front of the table and started taking the food on offer. Not quite like real people eating with spoons and chopsticks, but it felt more like they were absorbing the essence and energy of the food. One of the old men particularly ate lots of rice. After the memorial ritual, the cousin mentioned about his vision to Grandma and Aunt. They did then point out that on the handwritten memorial plaque were 4 ancestors commemorated: cousin's great-grandfather, great-grandmother, grandfather, and the eldest uncle. Apparently both the number, gender, and age matched what the cousin had seen. Cousin also mentioned how one old man loved his rice, and grandmother again pointed out how her late husband used to love rice when he was alive. A weird story somebody submitted to a radio show. He then just successfully finished his SAT and could finally join the New Year's family gathering again. Many high schoolers towards SAT are often excused from such family events so that they could concentrate on their study. His family was pretty conservative, and they all dressed up in hanbok, the traditional dress, for the memorial ritual to their ancestors. It was an elaborate affair with many family members and took almost an hour from start to finish. Ritual done, most family members changed their clothes to something more comfortable. He saw others carefully fold and put their hanbok back in boxes, but he thought he couldn't be bothered, and just hung his up in the wardrobe thinking he'd pack it up later. Everybody was startled by a scream. They all ran to the room where the scream was from and found a female cousin dropped on the floor in front of the wardrobe. Inside was the hanbok he hung up earlier, all right? But it was now facing front. Not only that, but the clothes were all puffed up as if somebody invisible was wearing it. Even the matching socks were standing up, all puffed and facing the front. Everybody was shocked and speechless. Only his old grandmother calmly approached and bowed politely to the hanbok. She then pushed her head close to it and whispered something, as if she were to a person. To everyone's astonishment, the clothes then went flat again, and the socks collapsed down as well. Grandmother told him that one shouldn't hang one's hanbok carelessly after a memorial ritual. as she folded it carefully. It's a story a junior soldier told during my military service. He was a big chunky man, so much so we nicknamed him a Terminator. But actually he'd suffered various ailments and weird episodes in his life. I guess he was born with weak chi, as people commonly say. Anyway, in the last year of his middle school, he got very ill. It got gradually worse over 3 weeks, and at the end of it, he could hardly stand up. But various doctors failed to diagnose what was really wrong. Came the New Year's Day. He was still very weak, but his grandma, living in countryside, insisted that he should come to visit. He didn't want to, both physically and mentally exhausted, but his grandma was so insistent that he complied in the end. Upon arriving to the house full of relatives and cousins, his grandma took him to a small room. Then she filled his mouth with red atsuki beans and made him bite on a kitchen knife. Everybody was baffled to see what she was doing, but before they could say anything, the kitchen knife made with iron cracked and broke into 2 pieces. Grandma didn't explain anything, but his ailment disappeared in a matter of few days afterwards. At that time, I didn't really believe his story if I found it a bit amusing. But later when I visited his social media page, I got chills to read a message from his cousin saying, "When the knife broke in your mouth, that was pretty shocking. I hope you are healthy and well now." I think I was 7 then, just started going to school. It was the New Year's Day, and as usual family and relatives gathered at my grandpa's, about 20 of them all. It's nice to see cousins and play with them, but when it felt a bit too much to constantly brush with relatives, I used to take a little break at the tiny room adjacent to the kitchen. That day too, I had a little argument with a cousin from the early morning, and went to that room to steam myself off. But there was somebody in it already, an elderly lady I'd never seen before. She looked perfectly normal, in comfortable clothes typical for old ladies. She was lying on her side, resting her head on her arm. Like a polite kid I was, I greeted to her first and asked, "Who are you?" "I'm your grandma," she said. "Excuse me?" I said, because for me, Grandma was the oldest person in the family and didn't think there could be anybody older. "I said, I'm your grandma," she repeated. I still didn't understand, but anyway, chatted with her a bit. Later in the day, I didn't see her at the memorial ritual or lunch after that. So I asked Mom, "Who's grandma?" "Who?" "Grandma." "You mean great-grandmother?" "I don't know. I saw her in that room," I said. "What are you talking about? Your great-grandmother passed away well before you were born," Mom said. I'm not sure what happened then, who that old lady was, if my memory is really correct, and if she indeed was really my great-grandmother. This is 100% true as I experienced it. It was New Year's holiday, and I was back in my grandparents' as usual. I don't sleep well in other than my own bed, so I was spending the long sleepless night watching TV. It must have been about 3 in the morning, and I heard a rooster crowing. But it wasn't a loud and clear one like I'm used to, but sounded more like a squeezed scream. And I heard the same weird crowing the following night too, about the same hour. I wondered if something was wrong and checked Grandpa's barn myself, and was surprised to find there was no rooster or hen at all, just some goats, rabbits, and dogs. I wondered because what I heard was clearly not from them. So I asked Grandma if one of her neighbors kept a rooster, that I heard one early in the morning. She said there was none, and asked me again if I really heard it. I said yes, and how weird it sounded too. Granny's expression turned all frowned up. She picked up a bottle of soju and some mandarins and took me to an abandoned house at the back of the barn. She poured the soju around it and swore ferociously in the manner I had never seen from her. I can't possibly write them down all here, but she was saying basically, why bother her innocent grandchild? Leave him alone. She continued shouting and swearing while pouring the entire bottle of soju and peeling the mandarins. Back home, she explained. Before I was even born, there lived a family in that now abandoned house. The husband had an affair with another woman and abandoned the family. The wife spent days drinking, crying, swearing, and shouting. I guess she had quite a temper. And one day had a big quarrel with my grandma, who came around to tell her to keep her rough words down for the sake of the kids. And the following day, the wife made an extreme choice by drinking up herbicide. Since then, Grandma suffered the weird sound of a rooster crowing until she performed a little consolatory ritual for the dead. But now, years later, the noise was back to her grandson, me. I don't know if what she thought it was is true or not, but I was never more scared than that day, seeing my grandma swearing angrily like there was no tomorrow. It's a story a school teacher told us during the class. She was in her late 50s and usually a pretty straitjacket character who never said anything other than the content of a lecture. But that eerie, dark, rainy day with low thunder rumbling from afar, the whole class nagged her to tell them a scary story. Normally she would have just scolded us and carried on with her usual routine, but she seemed in a different mood that day herself. "So, you want a scary story?" she said, and told us the following story. From when she was little, on New Year's Day, her father would offer a little ritual of a sort by himself after the family memorial ritual. It would have been already in itself weird, but even weirder was he would have various pairs of shoes on the table along with the food offerings. He took them to a small room and performed the ritual all by himself. One day my teacher got so curious and peeped in through the door, only to get caught and severely reprimanded. Since then, she didn't even dare to get close to the small room when her dad performed his annual ritual, let alone ask him what the ritual was for. Years passed, and she became a uni student. Family gathered around dinner table for another New Year's Day, and now an adult herself, my teacher finally asked straight what the ritual was for. Her dad emptied his glass of rice wine and opened his mouth. Her dad fought in Korean War. He was on the front when the South Korean troop and allies pushed northwards until they were nearly crushed by the waves of Chinese troops. He lost almost all of his brothers in arms, and only 11 of his group managed to escape. It was bitterly cold, and they were desperately short of supply. As they took the escape route through deep in the mountains, exhausted and starved soldiers dropped out one by one. Then the desperate rest would take shoes off from their dead mate, to boil its leather upper and ate it. By the time they managed to reunite with other fellow troops, there were but 3 left alive, including her dad. So he discharged after the war, got married and led an ordinary life until, since one day, he started getting weird dreams. 7 mates who died during the retreat appeared and cried in the dream, all of them barefooted. Dad shed tears for the guilt of the survivor. He held on to them, asking them to come with him, that he'd at least offer them a warm meal. But the barefooted soldiers replied,
"We are dead and should pass on, but we can't because we don't have shoes on."
Dad woke up crying. And since then, he started offering his weird memorial ritual with the shoes for his fallen mates.
"I want you to carry on offering the ritual for them, even after I'm gone. Could you do that for me? For them?"
said her dad, concluding his story. Again, years passed, and at his deathbed, her dad smiled, looking around his children, and said,
"I think you don't need to after all. I saw my old mates again in my dream. Now they are all wearing shoes."
The day after, he passed away peacefully. My dad's hometown is on a small island in Jeolla province. We have to sail on a ferry for a good 1 hour and a half from the mainland. So isolated from the outer world, it still feels like going back to 80s or 90s when I visit there. Anyway, it's back when I was 14. My family was visiting my grandparents for the New Year's holiday. For the last night of the holiday, I was spending time with the cousins at my uncle's on the other side of the island. I wanted to spend the night there, but Mom called up and told me to come back to Grandpa's, that we should catch the boat back to the mainland early in the morning. Past 8 in the winter evening, it was already proper dark. There was not a single street lamp, and I had to walk over a hill on the way, with tombs dotted around. It was really spooky to walk along that route just under the pale moonlight. The little school building standing dead silent and dark, thorny bushes looking like a furry monster crouching down, all triggered my wild imagination. I got so scared that I started walking on with my eyes closed. Stupid, but extreme fear takes your rational away. So I took my steps slowly to the top of the hill, opening my eyes just occasionally. And when I opened my eyes the next, I saw some whitish figure that came up to my knees, blocking my way. My heart dropped. I could not even scream. I just ran straight over the field, well out of the road. Then suddenly my foot sunk down as if something caught on it, and I fell down. I panicked to death. "I'm dead," was the only thing I could think, and I just froze. Thankfully, somebody was passing by on his rototiller. I ran to him, screaming, "Help!" He was a neighbor to Grandpa, and he gave me a ride. I poured out what I saw and experienced to grandparents and my parents. Grandpa then calmly responded,
"That must have been a baby spirit."
Back in the days, infant mortality was terrifyingly high in this remote corner with next to no medical facilities around. Babies who died even before they were officially registered would be buried in a shallow ground on the field with no funeral or ritual. As their little body rotted away, it created a little hollow space under the ground. And that's apparently where my foot sunk in. Then my dad chimed in that he too as a young boy happened to step on such a baby tomb and that he heard a baby cry. Well, whether they were serious or not, I can tell you that was the scariest night in my life. I enjoy ghost stories and horror films, but I don't really believe they actually exist. But I'm not too sure anymore for what my little sister told me yesterday. As you should know, some people say that the spirits of our ancestors hang around us to care for and protect us as a sort of guardian angel. And there's certain truth in that after all. It was on New Year's Day many years ago when we were still little. We were on our way to visit my late dad's tomb. It was quite a distance along the dirt road to get there, and Mom said she would take my little sister on a motorbike first and come back to fetch me. So she went off first with my sister on her back while I walked along the dirt road to the same direction. About 5 minutes later, my mom came back, put me on the back of the motorbike, and headed to the mountain where the tomb is. We had to cross a railway track on the way to the foot of the mountain. Just in time, a train was approaching, so Mom stopped the bike to let it pass. Everything was fine, until my little sister, upon seeing Mom and I, started running towards us. Mom cried, "Don't come!" But sister either didn't hear or didn't care. Before we could do anything, sister was on the track already, and at the deafening sound of the train horn, she stopped at the edge of the track. Both Mom and I screamed. Just then, she fell forward, and in a couple of seconds later, the train whizzed by, narrowly missing my sister. We all held each other and cried for a long time afterwards. And then, yesterday, we got together for another New Year's Day and talked about this and that from the past. Then my sister suddenly started shedding tears. I asked what was wrong, and she said she just remembered that day by the train track. She recounted how she realized the train coming only after she went onto the track, but could not move like a deer caught in the headlight. Just then, you see, I heard a weird voice whispering from my back. "It's not your time yet," it said. "You remember how I fell forward, narrowly missing the train? I think it was that someone who pushed me forward." Who can tell if that was really a spirit of our ancestors or any other guardian angel figure? But my sister believes it was our late dad, and I frankly just want to believe that too. It was the New Year's Day Eve 3 years ago. I went to bed a bit earlier than usual, about midnight, as my family visited on New Year's Day my late dad and grandfather's tombs away in the countryside. Just 5 or so minutes later, I heard my little brother coming back home, talking to somebody on the phone. My room door is fitted with a frosted glass, and because I tend to keep my door left open ajar, I could see my brother passing by on his way to his room. But who were the other 3 following him? I could not see the details through the frosted glass, but they were women, all in white hanbok. I was so shocked that I could not even utter a sound. My brother seemed clearly unaware of the situation, and I could hear him nonchalantly taking a shower. But now I saw the 3 women approaching my room. I was so scared that I just closed my eyes and pretended asleep. I waited a few minutes, I think, which felt like forever. There was no sound or movement, and I could not stand the tension anymore. I opened my eyes slightly, hoping it to be too dark in the room for them to see I was awake. The 3 women were sitting on my left in row, with their knees up just like the ladies in a costume drama. I was going mad. Was I dreaming? Was it a sleep paralysis? If I could lift my arm now and wave it across them, that should break the paralysis, wouldn't it? And if I didn't feel anything, it would prove it was just an illusion. I didn't want that terrifying moment to continue, so lifted my arm and waved across the women. My wrist was caught by the first woman sitting there. Her hand felt more like a dry twig, cold, rough, and lifeless. I don't know if I fainted at that point or not, but when I came around the next, it was already in the morning. In the kitchen was my mom, busy preparing the festive food. I asked my brother if he came home the previous night shortly past midnight, and if he went straight to take shower. He said he indeed did. Chills ran down my spine. I told Mom that we'd better skip visiting the tombs because I saw or experienced something ominous the previous night. But of course, Mom didn't take me seriously, and we were on our way. I drove extra carefully and arrived at the cemetery safely. But on the way back in the afternoon, I had a hard time keeping my eyes opened as I had a bad night's sleep. In the end, I had to hand the wheel over to my brother. We were running steadily on a quiet country road, but then it happened in an instant. Our car veered out and fell good 1 meter to the rice field along the road and crushed to the irrigation water pipe. Fortunately, nobody sustained a serious injury, but the car itself was damaged beyond repair. Mom finally accepted that what I saw on New Year's Eve was not just a dream. One of her friends is a shaman, and she sought her opinion. According to her, there was a female spirit among our family ancestors who was forgotten and never been offered a memorial ritual. Now she was around asking for her rightful share. Apparently, Mom was told something similar previously by another fortune teller too. She inquired around relatives about a person that would fit the description, and indeed, there was a distant aunt who died young, leaving no descendants. So, since then, we include her when we perform a memorial ritual on New Year's. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. To begin with, a Happy New Year for you all, once again. It can be a bit awkward to have one New Year's Day after another in quick succession, but it can't do any harm to make a good wish twice, can it? Hope you enjoyed today's stories. Some of them could very well grouped under the memorial ritual, guardian angel, family secret, resentful soul, or countryside village theme too, but I just mashed them together here because they all happened on New Year's. By the way, all of those themes I already have discussed in past episodes, so in case you missed them, the links are in the description. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a like and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters get an early access to my new videos. Thank you. A happy Lunar New Year once again, and hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Until the next, stay safe and take care.